So welcome Christa Davis, who is our special guest this month in October, yay, for the Sow You group. And of course, this month we're focusing entirely on career. So I scoured the internet looking for brilliant minds and brilliant people. It was very easy to come across Christa Davis and reach out to you and invite you into having a quick little conversation. Very informal, but very. I think what makes these so fun and unique and powerful is that you get to bring your unique perspective. There's no one right answer, as I'm sure you know, as a well-trained coach. But that we're always just looking for maybe new perspectives and new insights or new ideas, ahas that help enlighten us a little bit. But yeah, so our focus again, of course, is on career, and really that just means how do we have more simplicity? How do we have more balance? How do we have more joy in our careers? So I'm going to turn it over to you, of course, Christa, and I'd love to just hear more about you, your background, and what got you into the world of coaching and in careers.
Thank you so much, Tommy, for the lovely introduction. I am so excited to be here. Love it. We're both iPad coaches, the best place to go to get a coaching certification. A little plug there. And yeah, so my journey, and I'm sure like we talk, I wasn't planning to become a career coach. That's not one of the career fairs in high school. They're not like, oh, coaching is an option. So I grew up Long Island, New York. I've been in DC now, the DC area for a decade, which is insane. Grew up Long Island, New York, and I was the typical overachiever, perfectionist, all of those things. And I had my sights set on becoming a lawyer. I had like the perfect 10-year plan when I was going to college. I went to George Washington University, studied international affairs, and my plan was to go straight through to law school, become a human rights attorney. And I had all these big goals. And the truth is that a lot of those big goals were a way that I hid my insecurities and real lack of confidence behind that. I had a lot of, as I'm sure you can relate to, and I'll bring this back to how this relates to career, but I grew up not really knowing how to handle my emotions. I'm as a coach, very intuitive, very sensitive, and I repressed a lot of that. So that led to a lot of anxiety and high functioning depression from a very young age, like around 12 years old, 11 or 12, I remember feeling this way. And I hit it, kept going. And then when I went to college, when I moved to DC, being at a school that was so competitive, like GW, I don't know if you're familiar, anyone who's maybe listening to this, like going to school in DC, living and working in DC, it's like hyper competitive. And that was when I realized that the way I was feeling was not normal. And I started to get help just by going to therapy. And that was the first time I really slowed down to start looking at what was going on, who I was, what I wanted. I decided law school wasn't for me. And that was, my father's an attorney, so that was a little bit hard at first. I worked with him for a summer, but I'm very lucky. My father, what I told him, he was like, I just want you to be happy. So he was very supportive. And that was when the seed was kind of planted, like, oh, like I'm really passionate about developing myself. And I started paying attention to how many others, especially women, were dealing with all of the same things I was dealing with. And you probably see this, like, I feel like almost everyone has an anxiety problem these days, or they're feeling misaligned or unfulfilled, they're not having confidence. So that planted that seed. I was like, wow, like I'd love to help others with what I've been through. But again, I was in college, I didn't know what I could do. And I started working in the nonprofit sector. I knew I wanted to make an impact, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna work in nonprofits. And during that time, I fell into coaching. So I was 23 years old, and I met actually, she's done some IPAC training, my friend Stacy. We were paired as mentor and mentee in a random program. She was a coach, and she started coaching me and started taking me to different networking events. And at that time, I was like, can I be a coach? I was like, who's going to take me seriously? And even people would say to me, people love to give their 2 cents, like, who's going to hire you? And we'll probably talk about limiting beliefs. And Stacey really encouraged me to go for it. So followed my intuition, got my coaching certification. And it was one of those things, like, I wasn't like, I'm going to be a career coach. It was just like, I feel this calling, I'm going to follow it. And the pieces came together. And through that process, I started started coaching on the side, but I had kind of had another transitioning period. I started really seeing that working in a 9-to-5 job was not for me. And we'll talk more about matching yourself to the right type of career path. But there were so many things about it I hated. And my default was, there's something wrong with me. I need to fix myself to fit into this. And what ended up happening was I went through this period of, I want to build my business, but I can't. So what should I do? And kind of spinning my wheels. And these are the people I typically work with. They're at their final straw, at their jobs. They're feeling unfulfilled. They're feeling stifled. And it's like, what is it? What do I want to do next? And they're looking for clarity. They want the confidence to step into that. And this is kind of where I was. And I was laid off from my job in 2018. Best thing ever. And then I had to make a decision. I was interviewing for corporate jobs. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, that's the last thing I want. Just to make clear, I'm not anti-corporate. I'm just trying to show, like, for me, it was just so not in alignment. So I took the leap, and here I am now. Like, and as my business has evolved, I knew I was always attracted to career development, but a very holistic approach. Like, I'm not the girl that like your resume and your cover letter, that's a different type of career coach. Like, a really holistic approach and how to build a career or a business. Now I've kind of shifted into doing some more business coaching with my clients, but building a career or business that is fully aligned to who you are and the life you want to live. So that is my story. It's a long story, but I tried to tell you as quickly as possible.
Well, it's such an amazing story. And why I love to just create so much space for that is because, I mean, we've all been on a journey. Hindsight is 2020. When you connect those dots of like, it's like, yes, I'm not crazy. I can see how each little step built on top of itself. And even, like you were talking about you and your dad and you working for your dad, that was important to you. Like, you didn't really expand on it, but I could just feel that sense that, like, it was really important to you that he supported you in finding what was fulfilling for you and what was happy for you. And then lo and behold, what are you doing? You're helping others feel fulfilled in what they're doing. And, and if that means making a transition or taking a big, bold leap, that's something that you can not only support people with, but you do have that experience and that understanding. And I love that you mentioned, I'm actually the same. I always feel like I'm a little bit in the minority that I actually don't have bad things to say about corporate. I actually love my corporate career. I love the people that I worked with. And it just didn't feel in alignment, like totally took like completely resonating with that.
Mm-hmm. And I always like to make that clear. And a lot of times the people I do work with, they're like, a traditional job isn't it for me. What is it? And because a lot of times we're told, like, your career has to look like this. And that's, for some people, it's perfect. For others, it's not. And whatever it is, it's not right or wrong. That's not right or wrong. It just is.
It just is. And I completely agree. And you just saying that just reminds me of, like, people who, like, are just such natural fits in corporate. Like, it just makes sense for them. Like, it just works. And so I think that's something that we do whenever we talk about careers. Like, we're not saying any particular industry or role or anything is bad, nor is it good, obviously. When we're coming from a higher level where we can release that judgment, but it's more like, and I wanted to really write this down, is matching your career path. So I'd love to dive into that a little bit more. Like, what's sort of your approach, or how is it that you support people in matching them with their career path?
Mm-hmm. The first part is clearing out everything they've been taught.
Oh, yeah.
Right? All the stuff that's swirling around the head. My career should look like this. Like, it should be a straight line. I should work my way slowly to the top. I can only stay at a job. I have to stay at a job for 2 years because I don't want to be a job hopper, right? All of those things we're told. It's clearing that and creating a space where it's like, well, who are you? first. It's simple. Like, what do you truly value? What do you want and starting with your life? Like, of course, working is a means, in some ways, is a means to an end, right? You know, your job, you're exchanging, you're getting an income in order to create your life. But first, it's like, before you rush into the job, what's the life you want? Some people, like, freedom is one of my top values. And this is just a little quirk. And looking at the quirks can actually say a lot. Tommy, I hated having a limited number of vacation days. Like, when I say hate, like, I mean it, like, you can probably feel me viscerally. Like, I hated it. I was like, I don't want 15 days of vacation. Like, this doesn't make sense. And I know that's such a little thing, but that, just looking at that, like, if this was a client saying this to me, I would say, well, tell me more. Why does that bother you? And there's always more underneath it. Like, that little quirk, there's a lot underneath the surface. And for me, it was like, well, I want to be able to create my life. I want to work when I want, how I want, and be in full control over that. And that was something also that was non-negotiable, I discovered. So looking with people, because there's some things that are non-negotiables, and there are some things like, you know, like, so the other part of entrepreneurship is like, it's just you. There's a lot of responsibility and there's a lot of pressure sometimes because it's only you. And for me, like, I can deal with that for the freedom. And so sitting with my clients, looking at who they are, like I said, I call them the little quirks. Like, what are those little things that bother you about your job? Because it tends to reveal a lot, looking at their values, the life they want to create. And also really, of course, what are they good at? What are their strengths? Where are they in flow? And going beyond not just what they're quote unquote good at, but really, what are you great at? And where is that? You may have heard, Gay Hendricks calls it the zone of genius.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So start to make sure I'm answering your question. So that's where I start. It's like, who are you? And a lot of times people are coming to me because they're unsatisfied in their job and looking at, okay, what are all the things that are going on and what's the why underneath those things?
Yeah, exactly. And what's so, I think, brilliant about that approach is in emphasizing these little quirks, because, you know, as we have learned, the way you do one thing is how you do everything. So like, these little quirks are actually a treasure trove of information. It's just that, like, going back to being on your own, right? Like, it's not something that we necessarily by habit or by default take the time to dive into. And in fact, sometimes those quirks are so automatic and they're so fast that you need someone like you who's listening and observing. And you're like, ooh, I'm picking up on these quirks that you probably don't even notice because they're so fast and they're so habitual. But it's, you know, what if it links to one of your greatest values, like freedom?
Exactly. Or people think the quirks are something they need to fix.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because a lot of the advice we get is like how to be good at the job, how to improve yourself. And we do hear more now, I think, in the space, like, don't spend time fixing your weaknesses, focus on your strengths, but it hasn't completely, like, we're getting it, but it hasn't completely been embodied yet. Right? Yeah, right. It's not completely embodied, but it's kind of that same thing. Like, for me, when I was in my job, I looked at the vacation thing, right? Simple example. I was like, there's something wrong with me. I'm entitled. I felt like embarrassed about, like, it sounds silly almost, because it's like, why would you feel shame about such a little thing? But I thought it was because, like, there was something wrong with me and I needed to get with the program. So we either spend time, ignoring, dismissing the quirks, or trying to fix them, when really, as you said, it's treasure chest.
Yeah.
It's full of magic.
Oh, I love that. I love that like, these things, and going back to, like, Gay Hendricks and the zone of genius, like, you know, it depends entirely on our perspective. Are these things that we feel like are broken and need to be fixed? And actually bringing up entitlement is a big part, because I think even when you hear, like you just shared so boldly, you know, it's like, I want to do my work my way that honors my values. And I think a lot of people, and you're going to be the expert here, that's why I bring you in. But I have a sense that a lot of people are like, well, that's great for other people, but that, like, doesn't work for me. Like, if I start talking about, like, well, this is what I want, then that's just some sort of, like, selfish, entitled part of me that's annoying and has been annoying me my whole life. how close am I to that? That's the way that some people think about creating a career that they want.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay.
I think it's like, yeah, it's possible, but who am I to deserve this?
Ah,
Or
there it is.
maybe even, what I'm saying, and this is a good sign. If people are triggered by what I'm saying, that's a good sign. And I experienced shame around that too. And especially the P word, privilege, which we hear a lot about these days. I'm not going in that, not going to go in that direction, but but I have had people say, like, isn't that like a very privileged way of looking at it? And the way I look at it, I mean, I know all different types of people. And the first thing that, like, in order to create what you want, you have to decide that like you're worthy of it, or that it's possible for you. And to me, that's not deciding that, making that decision. There's nothing privileged about that. And, the journey, depending on where you come from, whatever, I mean, obviously, I went to college, like I had that path, I'm college educated, all that stuff. But once you make that decision, nothing, like, you'll be unstoppable. And even though maybe it might take you a little bit longer than someone else. So it's really, and that's where kind of that mindset work kind of goes into that. Because a lot of times it's based on what you've been taught. Like that belief system, I know for people, like, just an example, like I had a client who, she had a big realization. She had parents who were divorced, and her dad pursued the passion and did not take care of the family, do his job, while her mom was in a job that she hated to provide for the family. So that brought up a lot of things like, I can't pursue my passion because then I won't be able to take care of myself or to, do what I have to do. So looking at those belief systems.
Oh, wow. And I completely agree. Like this power in decision-making, and like some of those belief systems, well, we're gonna go in two directions. Like one, the belief systems, that could be so personal, of like that example from your client. I mean, of course she's going to be like, her perspective of what it means to have a career and to have a job, and I like to think of it as like expressing yourself. Like it's a vocation. It's the way that you can serve. Even the word career in and of itself is not like one of my favorite words, which I maybe have some stuff around that, but whatever. Like just seeing how are you really, like that example exactly. Like, does career trigger you? Does vocation trigger you? Does being of service trigger you? A lot of my career was in support and in service of others, and so I actually have some energy around that. It's like I want, for me, like boundaries are really important, because I knew what it was like when I was in a service-based industry to give too much and to get tapped out. Mm-hmm. And so, like really starting to see, where do your ideas and understandings about career, job, vocation, service, serving other, like whatever word you want, comes from. And then of course the compensation that goes with it. How worthy are you to receive that money? And then the other note on like making that decision, I think one perspective that supports a lot of people is when they see that as that is their birthright. That's like part of the gig of being human, is an ability to decide and to make choices and to move forward. And for those of us that are like, that feel that to do so would be entitled, or it has some of that, like, using our language, more catabolic experience with it, or catabolic energy, or we'll say negative energy with it. It could really influence your ability, and can really detract your ability to make a decision and just go. And that's something you can make in your head. I decide and I go.
Yes. Oh, there's so much I can go on and on about this. Like yeah. I went through a lot of this stuff for me. So once I became a business owner, I don't know if you can relate to this. Building a business, if you want to do self-development on steroids, become a business owner, because it brought up stuff that I didn't even know was there. Like I didn't think I had money issues. Oh yeah, there was money. There was money issues. There were value issues. There was, oh my gosh. And that's the great thing about this work is the triggers are beautiful, because it shows you where you can grow. And when I took the leap, like I still had on one hand I decided, but my belief system still had to catch up to that decision. It was like my soul decided, but my belief system still had to catch up to that because I had a lot of doubt. Like, who am I at a young age to be able to do what I love for a living? Like, who am I to charge this amount of money? So there was a lot of that that came up, a lot of icky stuff, but through working through that, and I will say this, like, who I am now, just over the past couple of years, I have this unshakable confidence that I never would have gotten if I didn't go on this journey. And I think for those who are listening, like, you may see a path that you think about and there's a lot of fear and it's going to be a lot of work, but what ends up happening is, like, as you go through those things, you become a person that's unstoppable. And I'm sure you can relate to this probably in your own journey.
Oh yeah, it's the CrossFit of personal development to start a business on your own, especially when you're leaving something as, we'll say the word safe, predictable, reliable as a career, where you're surrounded by a bunch of people and you're surrounded by a company's vision and mission and OKRs, and you just have so much guidance to virtually no guidance. And I was curious, like, how open would you be to sharing a little bit of the work that you did that allowed you to move past some of those like value issues, money issues?
Yes. So since I went full time, I've worked with a business coach.
Okay.
And so I actually have 2 coaches right now.
Oh, nice. Double down.
I have my brand and messaging coach that I'm working with for a bit, and then my primary business and life coach.
Okay.
And I'm going to share this with you. And they both told me separately in the last 2 weeks. They're like, Christa, I want more clients like you. Like, you're a dream client. Now, why this was such a compliment to me is that I think it's important when if someone's looking for a coach, to make sure the coach has done the work and that they're coachable. And I think practicing what I preach, I don't get everything right all the time, but being able to say with integrity, like, I do this work on myself. And I'm not saying you always have to have a coach. You don't always have to have a coach, right? But doing that work. So for me, it's been investing in my own coaches. I'm also, I also discovered this practice called breath work. A year ago, we talked about this, and I actually enrolled in I'm getting my breathwork certification right now. And part of that process is, like, you're going through the process as you're getting trained in it. So yeah, and being really open, I guess, like, on the journey, like, being open to feedback from people, like, mostly my coaches, and listening to I want to emphasize, right mentors. I kind of had to make a mentor switch when I went from corporate to entrepreneurship, because it was a very different mindset. So being really open to people calling you out on your BS.
And that's it. That's really the key. Like, how open are you? And it's like the royal you to being able to look at that stuff, because it's not pleasant. But that's kind of the point of it. It's innate. The energy, that unpleasantness is actually what is keeping you blocked. It is what's keeping you small. It is what's keeping you just tolerating, is like, on a good day, maybe a work experience or a career experience. When you have that soul decision, and I love that you brought up that distinction, because this brings up this idea of, like, faith is more powerful than proof. It's this principle that we teach, right? And exactly that. Like, there's a difference between your mind making a decision and your soul making a decision. And you can tap into that soul decision for that confidence, for that support, for that energy. And correct me if I'm wrong, but to also then have the courage to be as open as, like, say, you are, because look how that's supported you. Look how that's helped to expand your experience of life, and your career and your contribution, and how it is that you're supporting people in this world. That's just very, very inspiring and very powerful to hear. So thanks for sharing that.
No, definitely. And just one little snippet there. It is almost, in a way, it's like, it is a calling.
Yeah.
And I believe everyone has a calling. I really do. Like, and I'm a very spiritual person. My faith is very important to me. So I approach my business and my career with that lens. And, I meet my clients where I'm at with that. Some are not, I respect that. But a lot of times the decisions, those tough decisions cannot be made with your mind. They can only be made with your body and your spirit, soul, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so actually going into that realm now, like this idea that we have a calling or we have something that I tend to think of it as in frequencies and resonancies, right? Like there are certain notes that you can hear in a musical piece. I'm a musician. So like you can hear a note and it just like, it resonates with you. Like it's beautiful. Like I just love a low A. I don't know what it is, but I just do. Like it resonates with me. Like the lowest A you can play on a piano. It's one of my favorite notes, and it just resonates. It just hits, and I feel like that's part of this calling energy. Like you just know when you have it, and it's not something we need to really seek. It sort of comes to us in a weird way. Maybe we can expand on that, but I'm kind of curious from your standpoint. So you mentioned calling, you mentioned values. Like, what are some of those key indicators when you are, say, in alignment, being successful with your career? Or maybe just ask another way, like the end state, like when people are working with either you or any career coach, or they're working on themselves, like what does that successful alignment look or feel like?
Ooh, I think of a few things. And the first thing that's popped into my head
Yeah.
is synchronicities.
Mm.
Things I see this with my clients, I experience this with myself, is things just start to materialize. Like, and I know this with my clients, it's like it's magical. There's an element of magic when they say yes to committing to making this investment in themselves and they start doing that work. They'll be like, Christa, I just decided to quit my job. Oh, a client came out of nowhere, this, that. And it's things start to flow. There's less resistance to things. Like when and it also depends though. I know it's taken for me to get into that flow. When I first started my business, even though it was in alignment, I was definitely like, woo, kind of control freak with the process. So I think I got in the way there. But you do have those moments where it's like, oh, it makes sense. And another sign there is, especially in the beginning, it's going to feel right and your mind might freak out about it. That's very normal as well. And things start to feel easier also. Like it's, even if you're working, maybe a lot, you're working hard, it's not as much effort. And like you said earlier, hindsight is 2020. I look back at my old job. I was in fundraising, marketing, communications, and I look like I was really good at my job, but now I know what it's like to be like in flow, right? There's a difference. It's like it took, and I happen to be a really good writer, so that's something that comes into my skill set now. But when I'm coaching, when I'm teaching, when I'm doing certain things, it's like effortless. Versus when I was in that old job, I was good at it, but it was like still like you're in a box, like kind of like a robot in a way. So those are some signs that you're on the right path. And I also want to emphasize the one thing, because sometimes I think in our space, it gets glamorized. Yeah. Like, you're going to be in this job that you love and it's going to be easy. There's still hard days. Like, I love what I do, but I still want to take a freaking vacation. Like, to have a job that you don't want to take a vacation from. I still want my vacations. I still get exhausted sometimes. Like, sometimes I work a bit too much. I'm a recovering workaholic. Some days, I'm like, I don't feel like working. So I don't want to glamorize it, because life still happens, but it's a different level of, as you said, it's like a different level of engagement versus when you're in a job that's not really the right fit.
Yeah. And I think that's something that could be maybe a little confusing, because similar, that was my experience as well, in terms of like just having a natural gift and talent for what I did. I had a natural gift and talent for technology and understanding it and working with it and using it and supporting others with it. Like, it's almost like it's not a zone of genius. You can maybe call it zone of excellence, but maybe like a zone of goodness. Like, you can do it. Like, you can do marketing, you do communications, you can work with nonprofits. Like, these are things that you can do. What was more for you was the experience of flow of what you're doing. And I really love that you sort of turned down the glamorization of it, because I think that's where, at least personally, like when I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to find meaning and purpose in my work or what I was doing, like I didn't feel that was when I felt my lowest. because I put this pressure on, like, I need to find that. I need to find what my purpose and my calling and my career is. Like you were talking about earlier, like there's still some resistance early on. And so like being able to sort of have a little more grace with that experience of like, allow that to come in. And it can be the hardest thing to do because that means like patience and openness and like faith and trust and all these things that can be hard to do when you're like, no, I know that finding a career of my calling is what's going to make me happy. And that statement in and of itself is where the pitfall is, because then you're shifting your happiness to this mysterious outcome. And then at the same time, like you can embrace those days where you're not feeling jazzed by it, or you're not feeling in the groove, or you're feeling like you're wanting vacation, and not being like, oh, Christa, maybe you didn't find your calling. Like that kind of thought's not going on. You're just giving yourself the grace to be like, it's okay. This isn't meant to be pure happiness all the time.
Yes. And that I noticed that like, it's become like this myth, like find what you love, find this. And I feel like there's a yes, but like, follow your passion, like, and make sure your passion is something you're good at. Like there's some things I'm passionate about that like I couldn't really monetize. Like, I don't know, like I'm passionate about shopping. That probably wouldn't.
Or could it? What might that look like, Christa? No, just kidding. We're not, yeah, we won't coach there.
No, it's, oh no, you got me laughing.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, the glamorization. It's like, life still brings challenges. Work, it's still a job, like a business, a job, it's still work, and it's not without challenges. And you're right, the biggest mistake we make is we put, whether it's a relationship, a job, anything, we make that responsible for our happiness. And the way I look at it is you want to be aligned with what you're doing, because that can also be misinterpreted, right? Like if you're in a job that's not a fit for you, like then you're trying to make yourself happy. That can, you know, there's a limitation there in terms of just like make yourself happy, but you are the way you approach things, you're the one that's responsible for your happiness. And with that, making choices that are in alignment with yourself. Does that make sense the way I explained that?
Well, I'm glad you paused there, because like you even said like even alignment can be kind of a tricky thing. You know, like we talked about synchronicities earlier. What are some of those other indicators that, even alignment is part of your experience, or how we can tap into that a little bit more?
Yeah. Right. Like what is alignment?
Yeah.
And part of this with where the struggle is, I think with this stuff is thinking we've talked about this. I think this is a good place to dive in. It's the mind versus your body and your soul. And the clients that I've had that have had the most challenges with the coaching process, and I'm starting to, now that I'm more of a pro, I can recognize this, is they're trying to come up with clarity in their heads, and they think clarity is out there. Like, oh, well, I gotta find clarity. Where is it? And it's not out there. It's not in your head. It's tuning into a deeper level of knowing. And I think we're a society that's so conditioned to be on our heads, and we over rely on it. So I guess for those listening, like for those of you who are listening, what I would recommend, if you're like, what is she talking about? I would just really just like take a moment, pause, breathe, and almost visualize yourself like falling, like your energy falling from your head kind of into your body. I'm kind of doing that even more. I'm kind of in my body as we've been talking, but I'm doing it more intentionally right now. I don't know if you feel it, Tommy.
Totally. Of course I do. Yeah, absolutely. I'm following your exercise with you. This feels amazing.
Yeah. Maybe people listening, you can feel it, and just feel like imagine operating like this in your life and making decisions from your body versus your head. And this is why I'm getting this training in breath work. And this is people that are listening, just using your breath, being intentional, just a simple deep inhale through the nose, exhale out through the mouth. Just doing that a few times intentionally, that can get you out of your head and into your body, because that's really where the answers are.
Which is oh my gosh, thank you so much for leading us through that, because you're right. And I can tell like it's hard for us because like we understand this idea of alignment and we understand this idea of flow and we understand and we can use these words to describe it, but they're really pointers. They're really concepts. Like Eckhart Tolle talks about this like crazy. He's like, you know, my words are at best a description of an abstract thing. You know, it's kind of like saying I can point to the moon, but like you've actually experiencing seeing it, or for the handful of people who've walked on it, like, you know, they can understand the experience of being on the moon. But like, you know, we can talk about the moon, but it's really just context. And so I love that you moved us then from our head to our heart. And I think why like people like me, for sure, I love conversations like this because it's like, what are other ways that we can contextualize? We can put words to the wordless, put some form to the formless, because you and I are not going to define truly what alignment is using words. It's just not possible. And then I don't say that to limit anything. I say that because it's the truth. And the reason it's impossible is because it's not in our heads. It's not in our conceptualizing logical brain. It's in our body. It's in our hearts. So really what we're doing is talking about how we can have that experience and that feeling in our bodies, in our hearts, in our souls, with our decisions, in what it is that we're doing on this planet.
Yeah, and some of these things, it's an energetic transmission.
Yeah.
I sometimes will encourage, and I will say even those listening, if you want to just even go back right now and practice listening with your body. Yeah. Rather than listening with your mind. And I'll do that sometimes with the women in my group program. I'll say, listen, ladies, tonight, listen with your bodies. Listen, don't try to listen with your minds, because then it's like you're not going to get what I'm talking about because the mind is not going to get it. Yeah. And practicing that level of listening. And that's people, I would say a great takeaway for people is if you're like, I want to be aligned in my career, practice in your day-to-day life, just listening on a different level, being in your body, listening to others fully, and just practice being in your body. As you do that more, you'll start to get insights and you'll start to get clarity on anything. So that's just, you know, one little exercise that you can do that you can bring into your life if you're trying to figure out your next career steps. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that. And I love that that's a step that we can do. 'Cause that's another question I was going to ask. Like, what's one thing that if we all did it, you know, would dramatically impact our satisfaction in our careers? And I think you just gave exactly the answer. And what I think is so powerful about that is because it is bringing the answers inward, which is really what we're looking for. When we talk about wanting clarity, usually what that means is like, I want to have a sense of understanding within. And only you somehow, some way amongst all of this creation, we've gotten things to a place where you can experience inside your own body in a way that no one else on this planet can do. I mean, maybe you can empathize and pick up some similar vibrations, but like if you're sitting there and you're listening with your body as you're working, as you're instructing folks to do, Christa, you know, that experience is unique to you. There isn't a single person on this planet that's going to experience it in that way at the same moment. And that is a beautiful thing. That is an amazing gift. And something that all you had to do was be born to experience that. That's it. That was your entry fee. And that's it. And it's just absolutely amazing. So go in, breathe, be with yourself, listen, experience with your being.
Yes. And I want to say, if any of those who are listening, if you're struggling, it's practice. Trust me, I used to be such a heady person. And even now, I mean, I have a fiery personality at times. Like, I like to get things done. So you know, it's not like we all walk around like, all zen and everything. So it doesn't mean you have to be that way. You can still access your body, and you'll become more comfortable with it over time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. I just love that to no end. And I'm glad you brought that in too, because it's like, I can definitely go off on consciousness and the experience and like this huge picture. And even that is just like, I've just learned other concepts and words that help describe a deeper thing. There's still descriptions, there's still concepts, there's still words, but the point is to experience and go within. and bring that. And I love also that, like, if you just bring that into your current work, you don't have to change a thing. You don't have to change you might be thinking a career change is what you need. There could be some of the grass is greener, all those kinds of pitfalls. But before we even go there, let's start with, what's it like to experience your work from your being, from within, from being centered, like you were just describing.
And to that point, sometimes when you shift, things shift. And
yes.
I mentioned earlier, I think this is actually a good turnaround here.
Yeah.
I mentioned I was laid off from my job. I truly believe I manifested that because I stopped resisting what was. And I actually started coaching like my coworkers for free. I was like, I got to do something to make myself happy. So I started coaching on my lunch breaks. And I'm not going to get into all the details, but the way it happened, they hired like a new boss. So I had one boss and then another one. They hired someone new who decided he didn't want to fund my position because he wanted an assistant. He was fired 3 months after. And I truly believe, I'm like, what are the odds that would have happened like that? And it's because I shifted. I stopped being like so angry all the time. And so sometimes just doing that, you, instead of always like, oh, I hate my job, I want to leave, I want to figure this out, just let go, get into your body, and just by shifting your energy, new possibilities emerge.
Beautiful. I love that. I cannot think of a better way to maybe round out our conversation and end on that, and to say, like, watch what happens, go within and watch what happens. Allow those synchronicities to appear. Yes, I know you may feel like things have got to change in your job, and things will change. In fact, that's probably the only guarantee. Be with it for now and be with the process. So let's say someone has done that and they're ready to move on. They're like, okay, so some things are happening. I'm gaining some insights, and like they wanted to maybe talk more with you, and maybe learn a little bit more about like what it means to work with you, and get some of this more alignment, more clarity with their work. Like, what's the best way to track you down?
Yes, so my website, Christa, and I'll give you the link to include ChristaDavisCoaching.com. And I have 2 great freebies as well. I have the What's Stopping You from Loving Your Job quiz and resource guide. You can take that on my website. It tells you what's keeping you stuck, and it gives you a 25-page resource guide. I also, in 2 weeks, October 26th, I have a free 4-part training series about how to create the career you want your way. So I'll give you the links for all of that so you can share that. And yes, please feel free to get in touch. I love to connect with others. If you have any follow-up questions, for those of you who are listening, please feel free to send me an email or connect on social media.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's why, like, when you and I talked before we started doing this, like, that's why I love being able to do this, just so we can bring more awareness and more resources to others. Like, I love being able to connect the dots like that. One of my values is I love meeting new people. I don't know if that's a value or not, but it's an experience that I just really love to have. So this gives me a chance to meet new people, and connect the people I do know with new people that I'm meeting, which that just in and of itself is actually extraordinarily rewarding. So thanks for sharing those free resources. And I think I laughed over your URL, so I'm going to repeat it. ChristaDavisCoaching.com. You and I are both laughers. I think it's a good thing that we're not like in the same city, because I think we would just kind of go hang out and like, get a drink and just laugh, and bring your spouse. I'll bring my spouse, and we would just, oh my gosh, we would just laugh endlessly, I think.
I can see it. I love it. I like to cackle. I feel like I have a cackle.
Oh, I love it.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you, Christa. So what if anything would you like to add on top before we totally round out?
I could leave one thing.
Yeah.
One thing out of today is what I feel called to share is you, if there's a part of you that doubts that you can create this beautiful career and life for yourself, you kick that part in the butt and just know that you 100% deserve this. And coming from someone, I'll be honest, like the life and the business I'm building today, I did not think it was possible. Like I truly, I have these moments where I have to pinch myself, and I'm not special, you know, like I'm not any different from you. I just decided what makes me, I guess, different is that I've decided to follow it and face the fear and move through it. And that's really all you have to do. So that's what I would leave the group with.
Beautiful. I love it. I'll allow that doubt to just get kicked right in the butt, and just decide, allow the synergies to come, make those decisions, take those small steps, those small actions, and bring it all together. So thank you so much, Christa. It was such a treat. I'm so glad you got a chance to play with us in Sow You group for this month. There was a reason, like this is only our second month, and there was like first month was on relationships because that was really top of mind for folks. And then second month, I was like, I've got to make it careers. Like I know that is just so top of mind for folks, especially right now who are probably experiencing lots of different variety of things in their careers, from maybe being let go to maybe not feeling very happy in where they're at, or maybe ready for change, or who knows, like the energy is all over the place. So thank you so much for coming here and sharing your wisdom.
You are so welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Christa. Bye.
Bye.